democracies.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws, and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to...
Hello and welcome. I'm Sima Katauka and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. Israel says its military recovered the remains of the final Gaza's hostage ran Greeley, as US President Donald Trump has hailed the mission on his social account. The United Nations welcomes the return of the last Gaza's hostage remains and offers condolences to the family. UN spokesperson says full ceasefire implementation in Gaza is critical and urges all sides to act now. US President Donald Trump raises tariffs on South Korean autos, lumber, and pharmaceuticals to 25%. He says Seoul's parliament has failed to approve a trade deal and is not living up to commitments. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey says some federal immigration agents will begin leaving the city from Tuesday. This follows a call with President Trump where Mayor Frey says the president has agreed the situation cannot continue and that progress is now underway. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says the next Ukraine-Russia talks are expected on February 1st, but adds the meeting should happen sooner. He stresses Ukraine needs real results from diplomacy, not Russia postponing again. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen says Europe has shown strength and unity over Greenland. She adds the issue is about democratic principles, national integrity, and Europe standing firm on who they are. White House says 20 more countries have signed up for President Trump's Board of Peace aimed at managing Gaza and tackling global conflicts. White House calls it a major step for U.S. and international diplomacy. French National Assembly has approved a ban on social media for children under 15. Citing mental health crisis and online bullying, President Macron hails this ban as a major step. Now for this hour, we start with Japan. Japan's Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi has sparked a new discussion, stating that Japan's alliance with the U.S. could collapse if Tokyo ignores a crisis over Taiwan. Takaichi has also clarified her earlier remarks, stressing that Japan would not take military action if China and the U.S. were to clash over Taiwan. However, she has stressed that Japan would need to act if Japanese and American citizens in Taiwan were at risk. Takaichi's comments come after rising tensions with China, which follows remarks of last November, where Takaichi suggested Japan could respond militarily to a Chinese attack in Taiwan. Since then, China has reacted strongly, imposing export curbs and cancelling flights. Notably, Japan's pacifist constitution restricts direct military action but permits collective self-defense. With a snap election scheduled for February 8th, Takaichi Ho has enjoyed high approval ratings. She seems poised to leverage this issue in her favor, despite receiving criticism from opposition leaders. Now for this discussion, we welcome Dr. Asta Chada. She's an Associate Professor of International Relations, joins us live from Kyoto, Japan. Thank you very much, Dr. Chada, for joining us. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Now, how do you analyze the situation between Japan and China, and why do you think Sanai Takaichi, the Prime Minister, has stated these things right now?
I mean, on the one hand, she seems to be, in a way, rolling back on the idea of linking Japanese security very directly with force mobilization.
That she has made Japan's alliance with the U.S. could collapse if Tokyo ignores a crisis over Taiwan.
I mean, we must understand that even under President Trump 1.0, there was an expectation from the Trump administration that Japan not only pay for the alliance in part, but also Japan step up its activities and cannot entirely depend on building defenses based on the US bases or the US presence in the Pacific. And we are seeing a continuation of that policy under Trump 2.0 as well. So she being, one of the conservative leaders, we've seen some of the more recent, I mean, in the recent elections when she came to power, we saw that she broke off a very long-standing alliance with Komeito Party that now stands in opposition. So she's been making a lot of bold decisions, I would say, in that sense. She's been reading very well the politics in domestic affairs and abroad. So this statement, which centralizes Japan and Japanese actions for grounding or for keeping strong the US-Japan alliance, seems to me in a way her way of communicating that Japan is worthy of that trust, Japan is willing to take on that risk. And if Japan were to, in some ways take a step back and act pacifist, that would go against the norms of the alliance. Because I think in not just Japan, actually, there's this sort of a conflict already brewing for a long time in East China Sea and South China Sea. So her making those statements to me sound more like an harbinger of the role that she envisions Japan playing in the wider South China Sea and East China Sea conflict, and probably also in the wider Pacific security.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chada, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you. Now we stay in Asia. A joint naval sail has been conducted by the Philippines and the United States militaries at the disputed Scarborough Shoal in the South China Sea this week. Meanwhile, the drill featured the Philippine frigate Antonio Luna, a Coast Guard patrol vessel, 2 military planes, a helicopter, and the U.S. destroyer USS John Finn with the MH-60R Seahawk. Furthermore, the exercise is being aimed at improving coordination, tactical skills, and mutual understanding between the two treaty allies. This marks the 11th maritime cooperation between the Philippines and the United States since November 2023. However, the waters lie within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, which is also claimed by China, heightening the tensions in the region. Military engagements between the allies have increased under President Fernando Marcos Jr., reflecting Manila's closer ties with Washington and amid China's growing presence in the South China Sea. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Dr. Asta Chada. She's joining us live from Kyoto. Thank you very much, Dr. Chada, for staying with us. Now, how do you see this increasing cooperation and coordination between U.S. and Philippines? Do you think that they are poking at China in a way? How do you think China will be eyeing this?
I mean, the very fact that there exists a mutual defense treaty between the United States and the Philippines has been for a very long time a concern for China. But I mean, if you look at it from the Philippines' point of view, it is already embroiled in a conflict with China over South China Sea, over disputed territories. There is the overlap of claims when it comes to exclusive economic zones between Philippines and China. I mean, again, this is not just limited to Philippines. There are other countries also. Vietnam is part of it. But I mean, leaving that aside, just talking from the Filipino and Chinese perspective. So they have shared interests, they have common complaints, they have conflicts. conflicts whether it's regarding fishing rights or it's regarding exclusive economic zones. US presence in that region in some way signals a wider sort of, implication for that conflict. And this mutual defense treaty between Philippines and US was pretty much supposed to safeguard those interests of Philippines, also meant to safeguard the interests of United States for freedom of navigation, free and open Indo-Pacific, and the idea that the shipping lanes or sea lanes or trading routes cannot be controlled by any one player. Now, these joint exercises are coming, coming in light of the various incidents. It's the 11th iteration since 2023, and since their leader, the Filipino leader Marcos Jr.'s stance, his foreign policy stance towards United States has been consistently very friendly. So as a result of it, this 11th iteration should be seen more as a continuity in the United States' own policy when it comes to whether it comes from the perspective of free and open Indo-Pacific or the perspective of how US is assuring a presence and assuring assistance in case of any conflict that occurs in South China Sea. And it is US honoring its mutual defense treaty with Manila. Seeing it from the Filipino perspective, they are doing these exercises. For them, it's about maintaining joint operation capabilities. It's about Philippines signaling to China that they are not alone, they have allies, and then trying to maintain or assert in some way their own territorial integrity in the South China Sea. Now, response from China has usually been, in the bandwidth of either them entirely condemning the operations or vocally China, not accepting US presence and considering it a violation of whether it's the 9-line claim or violation of its own territorial sovereignty. But in the recent past, we've seen a sharp rise in the incidents where the Chinese Coast Guards and the Filipino Coast Guards have in some way clashed, and that has led to either serious injuries or at some points even deaths in the South China Sea. So this exercise then becomes very central to show that the South China Sea claimants, specifically Philippines being a US ally, are not alone in this conflict, and it does have partners, and it's not going to bow down in the face of any violence or any sort of unilateral action that is taken by Beijing.
With that, I would like to thank Dr. Chadha for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move on to US. According to reports, Gregory Bovino has been removed from his role as the commander-at-large for the US Border Patrol. Bovino will reportedly return to his former job in California, where he's expected to retire soon. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has said he would send the White House border security czar Tom Homan to Minnesota following last week's shooting of 37-year-old nurse Alex Prete by immigration agents during a confrontation with protesters in Minneapolis. Trump has stated that Homan will meet with Minnesota Governor Tom Waltz today. Minnesota and Homeland Security officials have also headed to court over evidence linked to Prete's shooting.
I walked through the detainee facilities, I walked through the medical facilities, I walked through the cafeteria.
According to reports, Gregory Bovino has been removed from his role as the commander-at-large for the U.S. Border Patrol. Bovino will reportedly return to his former job in California, where he's expected to retire soon. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump has said he would send the White House border security Tom Homan to Minnesota following last week's shooting of a 37-year-old nurse, Alex Prete, by immigration agents during a confrontation with protesters in Minneapolis. Trump has stated that Homan will meet with the Minnesota Governor Tom Waltz today. Minnesota and Homeland Security officials are also headed to court over evidence linked to Prete's shooting. Now, for this discussion, we welcome retired Major General Sudhakarji. He's a senior strategic and international affairs expert, joins us live from Jaipur. Thank you very much, Major General, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at Minnesota and also the fact that there's a change in the commander-at-large of the U.S. Border Patrol, Bovino. Who was he, and why do you think he has been replaced?
Suma, good morning. Thank
Good
you
morning.
for inviting me for your show.
Thank you.
I would say that he's the most non-controversial personality going around in the present circumstances. The Republicans are under lots of pressure. They have to show some kind of a change because it's the hotbed or Minneapolis is actually the Democrats are the dominant political dispensation there. So under these circumstances, I feel my take is it is simply a survival technique for Republicans to say that some action has been taken. Now, this is to answer your question, but I have something more to add. If you have time, back to you, please.
Yes, please add. Thank you.
You see,
Yes.
Americans have started killing the Americans.
Yes.
Okay, nobody outsider is coming, neither ISIS nor Al Qaeda or anyone. It's the travesty of reality and the rule of law in a land of superpower, call it declining or whatever, that the American, it is unfortunate that they're killing their own people. Don't they have a law to prevent such kind of deliberate killing, putting the gun point at the head and shooting? This is not irony. It is a criminal. It is a deliberate attempt to, welcome criminal activities by the government forces. By no means of, no stretch of imagination can anyone, being a military man, I can share through your platform that if it is law enforcement by security apparatus or anything to do with the civilians, there is always a teaching across the board, all over, universal teaching that minimum force is to be applied. When you talk about minimum force, what it means is, let's say there is some potential danger. A man is in the verge of, like they have been alleging, that Mrs. Good was traveling her car at a breakneck speed or trying to, hit or target the immigration custom officials. So if that was so, then there are means and methods which are taught in the training that you firstly ask the driver to stop and do some activity to scare, to deter her. And thereafter, if nothing happens, if the response is not up to the mark, you then use the firearm as a last resort. And when you use the firearm, you fire below the knee. That is to incapacitate the assailant. If these are the issues which have not been adhered to, then I am afraid that America is going in the wrong direction. They have to make amends. These are my personal views. I may be wrong. I'm a well-wisher. We all hope and pray that America remains as a meaningful, substantive and responsible superpower, not as an irresponsible superpower, giving wrong example before the global body. Back to you, please.
And Major General, I also wanted to take your take on, in the beginning, the ICE agents targeted, or it seemed like they were targeting minorities, particularly maybe the Somali immigrants or the, racially profiled people. But now it seemed, at least to me, the last Rene Good and Alex Pretty, both of them, to me at least, it seemed like they both were not minorities. They both were white people. So what's this, who are they now attacking? What's this going on?
Oh, so a very brilliant question, I must say. It's too premature to come to any conclusion. And because one is also looking out for very sharp and meaningful evidences coming in the open source. At the moment, it is very difficult to pinpoint, are they actually aiming at the white Americans or they're aiming at the minorities? Your first articulation was correct. One always thought that they're targeting the Somalis. And now you find the Americans have been targeted. And within Americans, there are Hispanic, different kinds of religious affiliation and groups, ethnic groups. So one has to do a little bit of more research and come to that kind of a conclusion, because at the moment, at the moment, the officials are showing, brazen qualities of high-headedness. The high-headedness actually comes in, or high-handedness comes in, when they have unbridled support from the government. And government, in my opinion, should always say that these are my personal views. I am nobody to advise them. They have better people to advise their leadership. They should always maintain a stance of neutrality. They should always give scope for investigation, because the rule of law is such a subject. You cannot have parochial or partisan kind of decisions made for the people of America. America is what? The white percentage of white Americans is reducing in any case. These are the minorities which are making the better percentage or higher percentage, gradually growing by the day. So soon America is going to be flooded with the minorities. Minorities are going to become majority in any case. So therefore the rule of law has to be applied in a most meaningful manner, and without any kind of parochial or leanings, or any leaning towards ethnic affiliation. And only then America can sustain as a meaningful, substantive and global leader. Otherwise, I am afraid that the oldest democratic country in the world will become the oldest autocratic country if they do not make any amends. Back to you, please.
Very well said indeed. Thank you for highlighting that, Major General. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now we stay in the US. The White House has said that 20 more countries have joined President Donald Trump's Board of Peace, originally created to oversee Gaza for 2 years. The initiative is now expanding to address conflicts worldwide. White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt has called it a major step for U.S. and international diplomacy. Trump has hailed the initiative as a huge foreign policy feat and said it played a role in securing the Israel-Hamas ceasefire. He has also described the board as potentially the most prestigious ever formed and said he wants every world leader who can get the job done to participate, including Russian President Vladimir Putin. Officials say around 35 countries have committed, with 60 invited. Some European allies, including the UK, has declined to join, citing concerns about the board's expanded mandate. Meanwhile, Trump has held a phone call with Brazilian President Lula da Silva. The two leaders discussed Venezuela, organized crime, and the Board of Peace. Lula has agreed to visit Washington soon, underlining growing coordination between the U.S. and Brazil. Now for this discussion, we welcome back retired Major General Sudhakarji. Thank you very much, Major General, for staying with us. Now, is this Board of Peace becoming a mini United Nations? And do you think UN should be alert about this?
Absolutely. Soma, it's a brilliant question you are asking, very, very meaningful question. Because in 21st century, if at all we are expected to do anything, then one should plug the gaps in the existing architecture, which is based on transatlantic relationship. And since transatlantic relationship is falling apart, therefore the organization like United Nations is also turning defunct. And in absence of a defunct United Nations General Assembly and Security Council, one is left to no option. This is the logic I'm trying to give from Donald Trump's side. Perhaps in past 78 or whatever years post 1945, there are not many examples or hardly any example where the United Nations has actually played a pivotal and effective role to prevent a conflict or prevent a war. And with that kind of a backdrop, perhaps Donald Trump is thinking that this is the right step to do, come out of United Nations, although he has not come out distinctly. He's taken the authorization, the approval of the United Nations. There is a resolution number 2803 which has been passed, but that resolution actually affords a very limited scope, that is to Gaza, to bring peace to Gaza, peace and security to Gaza and reconstruction. And what started as a reconstruction way back after the ceasefire in September last year, 2025, soon was to crystallize as a Board of Peace in the month of November on 17th, 2025. But the Board of Peace, conceptually, is still being thought through. It is a work in progress. Asoma, if I may say, they themselves, I'm afraid I must call it out loudly, because the people who matter, who have coined this term of board of peace and who have given out a strategy to tackle the issue, unfortunately, they are not clear as to what are they looking for. The board of peace, if you read between the line, does not say any kind of proposal which has been lingering on is a historical legacy issue between the Palestinians and Israel. There are a number of hostilities which have broken out. They have had number of agreements in between, including Oslo Agreement 1993, and nothing has fructified, nothing is proving beneficial. So maybe only one perspective that I have in favor of Donald Trump is at least he is one man sticking his neck out, trying to look for a solution. But I'm afraid I must call out the thing that his solution finding or solution provider strategy is based on the paradigm of number one is demilitarization, number two is administration, number three is reconstruction. I don't think a historic problem between the Arab or the Palestinians and Israel will ever come to a status of lasting solution of peace and harmony. I don't think. I think as a normal layman who's joining the dots in geopolitics, Middle East requires a permanent and lasting solution. Only then the hostility between the Israel and the Arabic countries, particularly Israel and Iran, and the proxies of Iran can come to some kind of a ceasefire. So if that is not the aim, it looks like the board of peace is aiming for reconstruction. It looks like the board of peace is aiming for administration. It looks like the board of peace is looking for demilitarization. I must highlight the aspect that all the three I have listed out, they are basically means and methods, and means and methods for a high end state. What is that end state? Is the end state meaning to shift Palestinians in a clandestine manner to a country like South Africa, where South Africa is not agreeing to accept them? Is it meaning to shift the Palestinians to Somaliland, which is a breakaway country of Somalia? Are they meaning to send them to Indonesia and do not accept the theory or conceptual framework of two-nation theory? I have always maintained one stance, Asoma, that if two-nation theory is not working out, let them live under the one banner of one-nation theory. Area west of Jordan River to the banks of Mediterranean, the bank of Mediterranean. All this, let it be called as one state. Let them learn how to coexist. Let them kill each other for all we care. But they have to live mutually in a coexistential manner, not in a separate kind of cocoons, or having tried to divide the society further and continue the mayhem. This is not going to bring in any kind of lasting peace and harmony to Middle East, particularly this area. Back to you, please.
Yes, 100%. Thank you very much. With that, I would like to thank Major General Sadakarji for joining us today and sharing that insight. Now we move on to our tech news. Texas has banned state employees from using certain Chinese technology to protect privacy in U.S. Governor Greg Abbott has announced that it applies to products from Shein, Alibaba, Temu, and many more. The ban covers hardware, software, and also artificial intelligence used on state devices and networks. It also includes drone maker Autel and Chinese AI firm iFlyTech. Greg Abbott has said that the decision aims to protect the privacy of Texans amid growing concerns over Chinese technology in government systems in U.S. The move comes as tensions continue between the U.S. and China over trade and technology. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.